Hello and welcome to Nothing Exempt. I'm Brian Piotr and I'm here with my co-host Nicholas Pardini. And today's show we are going to talk about Elon Musk the person, not Tesla, not SpaceX, not a million other things that he does, but just the man and what makes him tick and what's he a genius at and what is he not. Nick, what do you want to start off with? What's the
Well,
first set of
first, I have
comments?
to state disclaimers here. None of this is investment advice. Please make your own research and trading and investment decisions by talking to an investment advisor and doing your own homework.
And
Other
and,
disclosure,
and
I have a short position in Tesla Motors stock. So I'll be transparent about that before people so people know my bias and my views on this. And
but specifically, we're not even that interested in talking about his companies.
I
Just
know,
talking about
but
him as a person.
we're all about transparency on this show, so I am going to just be clear on that before I get started. The other thing I want to mention, this show is brought to you by the Cause and Effect Report. Go to causeandeffectreport.com if you'd like to learn more.
Okay, Nick, where do you want to go with this first?
Okay, first, with Elon Musk, my view is that he's a smart guy. The thing is with him is that he doesn't really particularly know how or chooses not to correctly deal with the capital markets. Is really kind of his flaw, in my opinion.
Well, I think one of the things that makes him different is also one of the things that causes is the same thing that causes some trouble. Is he doesn't like structure, he doesn't like rules. He likes to think outside of the box and be creative and just do his own thing, like to his own fault. It's great for him being able to do things that nobody else has done or thought of doing and just doing it, which is fantastic. But then when he just does something that's against cultural norms, against the rules or laws, and he just doesn't pay attention to it either way, then it hurts him in the same way that it helps him on other things. And the fact that he has blatant disregard to what other people think is really beneficial as a engineer and really pushes the envelope of what's possible and what people have tried before. But when it comes to following the rules the SEC puts out on what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, then ignoring those is really dangerous. You think that's right,
Yeah,
Nick?
and I think his self worth. I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but it just seems like from an outside point of view, his self worth is too tied to the price of his stock.
Oh, on one specific issue, he's getting his ego involved on tweeting about the stock price and
Like, I mean,
going against short sellers.
he got a very favorable, at least in my opinion, settlement from the SEC. He didn't have to give up his spot as CEO of the company, and the fine was not very material. But nonetheless, within less than a week, he goes back in Twitter and bashes the SEC as the short sellers enrichment commission, and goes on this rant about why short selling should be illegal, and uh, doesn't but and all this other stuff that you probably shouldn't say when you just got out of a potentially much bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, common sense would tell you you don't throw rocks at cops, right? That's a
Yeah,
bad idea.
it's a very bad idea.
Like you say, don't poke the bear. Don't. There's a million different euphemisms for this. The SEC could do very destructive things for you and your company. Maybe you should not poke them.
Yeah, and I think with Tesla, that the legacy Elon is going to have, that's I think the positive part of his legacy is that he's going to be the one who brought electric cars back into the mainstream and made them a to internal combustion engines. Whether he makes a profit off of it and Tesla's a viable business is a whole nother story, but that's probably the biggest legacy that he's going to end up having. It's like kind of like what happened with the railroads like a century ago. The railroads drastically lowered the cost of transportation in the United States and in Europe, but the people who built those railroads, a lot of them lost everything.
I think that the jury's still out on whether or not electric cars will even beat internal combustion cars. Um, there's still room for other things to come in there besides that. But as far as uh, him just pushing the envelope of what's possible and doing things like the Boring Company, where he sells a flamethrower and builds a tunnel and just does stuff, just crazy things that nobody else would do. I think that's wonderful. When you see him talk at like a TED Talk type environment, like where he's giving a presentation, uh, he has moments where he sounds really smart, and he doesn't say like, I don't know. He's not. He definitely comes across as different. Like, I wouldn't say he's got any kind of disability because he doesn't, but he definitely comes across like he speaks different. His mannerisms, and everything's a lot different than a normal person. Besides just what he does, you can
You think
tell
he's
he's a
on the
different type.
ASD spectrum?
He's someone on some kind of something, but he's also highly productive and successful. And I don't think he's any kind of disability, but he's definitely different than people than most people. Will you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, he has. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't want to slander a guy personally, but as somebody who has symptoms of the ASD spectrum myself a little bit, he looks like he has maybe a little of them too. It doesn't mean he can't function in society, but he definitely is wired a little differently.
Yeah, and that's part of what makes him successful. And it's also going to get him in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I I give him a lot of credit for not caring about what other people think to a certain degree because that's how you propel and be successful in the world. Yeah, it's just that. And also the other thing he's underrated at, he's really good at marketing.
He may
Like,
be the best marketing person on the planet.
yeah, he is probably the best promoter of his brand and products. And the thing with Elon is that he has made billions of dollars for himself and the valuations of his companies. And I don't think a single one of his companies has turned a annual profit while he was there.
Well, he's in a point of view that it doesn't matter. And so far it hasn't. Like PayPal didn't matter. So part of that is the Silicon Valley like way of thinking about growth and not profits. And in environments like we have today, then it really pays off. But it eventually has to matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, PayPal makes a lot of profit now.
Yeah, well, like eventually it has to matter. So like if he had an exit plan and he was selling out to GM, who was going to come make it profitable, and had a totally different way of doing his car company, it would make a lot more sense. But he's a public company that's just focusing on growth. And right now, I feel like those companies that are just growth focused and not profits focused are really in danger of being taken out by any kind of recession or loss of demand.
Or just a change in the speculative mode because when interest rates on a real term, if they rise, you can make a good return just by having your money sit in the bank or buying safe treasury bonds. It's less attractive to go speculate out on the risk curve on something like Tesla.
Well, a lot of people aren't even speculating; they're just buying into marketing. So regardless of what Tesla makes or loses, a lot of people are buying off of the hype, the marketing, and have no connection to how the company's doing. They just love the product and they love the message and and are totally disconnected from whatever the balance sheet says.
Well, it's a classic story stock. So, I mean, that's not just a Tesla thing. It happens to a lot of high growth tech companies.
I know it's kind of where we are in today's market. But the thing about a story stock is the story can change overnight, and Elon's coming real close to that type of thing happening with these SEC tweets.
Well, yeah, I mean, also, I think really the thing that got me from a more bullish view on Tesla to a more cautious view on Tesla was when he bought Solar City in 2015, which was on its way to basically failing into the ground. And it was run by his cousins, and he basically bought it to kind of bail them out. I think a lot of Elon knows this, I think, in my opinion, is that his whole business model relies on his brand being impeccable and him having a Midas touch. And when that starts to wobble is when the whole thing may come down. And that's why I think he bought Solar City, because you can't have something with his name on it go bankrupt. It would have destroyed the whole momentum of what he's trying to do.
And do you know why Solar City was going bankrupt? Why wasn't their business model working?
Well, it's because um, that mainly it was kind of just like a finance company that with an environmental sticker on it. They just had way too many losses, and the capitalization rates for these solar projects wasn't high enough to make up for it, especially if subsidies were starting to go down. A lot of these panels that were being built on these roofs at many of the western states.
I I think the main reason was kind of what you're saying about capitalization is you they own the solar panels. And so if they spend $30,000 on a solar panel that's not going to pay off for a long time, and then 2 years later new solar panels come out that are twice as efficient, then their existing capital, their investment has to be written down because it's not as valuable if the new products are less efficient. So it's not like you can sell that ever. It's on somebody's house. You basically have to recover it over the course of 30 years. And you've sucked up all your capital. You can't go get another loan based on that solar panel in somebody's house because it's not worth anything. And so it's just a money sucking uh, business structure. There's no way to move forward with it because your revenues coming in are so small that you can't use your revenues to go do it again.
Yeah, and the cost structure was too high. Was really the main issue with it, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
but if the value of what was on somebody's house was still there, then you can go get a loan out on that to go invest more to do it again, like to move forward. Like if you were buying houses and they go up in value, you can go get more loans on them to buy more houses. You can have like a positive feedback loop. But every time you put 30 grand that they had to come up with in somebody's onto somebody's roof, it was written down to almost nothing, and then you can't do it again the next month unless you go get 30,000 more dollars. You have to go raise money forever until revenues start to equal your capital costs.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're kind of trying to bring like a SaaS style subscription model to something that's more physical in nature, and that was kind of the problem with it.
Yeah, you'd have to have an unlimited supply of capital and wait 15 to 20 years before you started being cash flow positive.
Yeah,
It,
sorry, we're getting a little bit off topic here. We're driving into Solar City. Um, the one thing that I'm not really sure about, since it's not public and they don't really release like financial records, is SpaceX. Like SpaceX looks to be dominating its niche in terms of private space travel, but at the same time, we don't know whether they're doing that by incurring a bunch of losses or finding a way to profitably lower the cost of space travel versus NASA. I mean, you're an aerospace guy. What are your thoughts on SpaceX?
uh, from what I've heard from people who work there, and if you look at their job descriptions online, they're mandatory 60-hour weeks, often a lot more than that. They'll pay you double time to come in on Christmas and 4th of July, and basically they want everybody to work as much as anyone will give them. And burning the candles at both ends like that makes me think that they may be really productive and efficient with labor in the short term, but I don't see how you keep long-term career people in in your company. Like, say I'm really into space travel and I'm like the most enthusiastic person on the earth and I become really experienced, but then I get married and start having kids. At some point, I'm not going to want to work that much. And so their long-term strategy doesn't seem like something that's going to pan out.
But can't they do it like the Big Four model, where most people leave after a few years, and then you just basically have like rising young talent put in their few years at SpaceX, and then leverage that experience elsewhere, and then you just replace them with the next fresh batch of top engineering graduates?
Yeah, maybe it's possible that that's the case, but for a lot of things in aerospace, it comes down to experience, knowing how to design something specifically for rockets because you've done it for 10 years will be more efficient than hiring a bunch of new guys out of college to have their hand at it. So maybe they do have something in place to hold back more experienced personnel, and that is just conjecture by me that they don't. So, I have no idea, but what I've heard from people that I know that work there, they love what they're doing, but it gets old rather quickly to put in those kind of hours. In terms of their bidding on different things for government contracts, when we get to see it, they're coming in way below everybody else. So the fact that they may be like 40% of what ULA might bid, it's United Launch Alliance, means that they'll win every government contract that is awarded based on merit. And it also means that they have a lot of room to raise prices. So the fact that they come in at 40% of the next bid, they can raise their prices a lot and still be the low bidder. So even if they are losing money on those things to build up a track record, they're so far below any competition and their cost basis is so much lower than the existing competition that they have a lot of room to just raise prices to still be the cheapest. So I'm not actually afraid of that company running out of capital, but they have been raising money, and so that they must be using it to either grow or to pay for losses. But since they don't release their financials, you don't know which one that is.
And one thing also, just with this Elon thing, is I think once this whole story resolves itself one way or the other, um, with Tesla and SpaceX, I think the Elon story is going to make a great movie one day.
Oh, it will be a fantastic movie. And if we actually go to Mars, like like there could be some crazy things coming in the future. Like we could go to Mars because of SpaceX, and Elon could end up in jail because of his tweets or something in the SEC, or there's some kind of scenario that might be like that where he could watch people land on the moon from jail, or maybe nothing bad will happen to him and he'll be like the Teflon man where he can say and do whatever he wants and he won't get charged with anything and never get in trouble, and maybe he'll go to Mars. Like I think really cool things are going to happen because of the companies that he started.
Yeah, the thing is that if Tesla becomes like if it was a massive financial failure and a lot of shareholders lose their money, but at the same time, SpaceX brings some guy to Mars within the next 5 years, do you think it would have been worth it for society?
No, I don't think that it's actually any benefit to society to go to Mars, but we're allowed to waste money on things when it sounds like fun, and especially if it's private money. So I think it'd be cool to go to Mars, but I don't think it benefits society really. And 5 years is too soon. If we've seen that, if we've seen Elon's forecasting ability for building an automobile is any precedence, then I would double whatever he says about going to Mars. So I would say maybe more like 10 to 15 years if we really do go.
Yeah, I remember I was there's a store in the mall when I grew up. There's a science store, and they had this banner that said that like basically Mars was supposed to happen by 2020. It's almost 2019, and we're not even close. I mean, didn't you think like 20 years ago we would be on Mars by now, some way or another?
No, no. Okay, so since Challenger and Columbia, and we've seen what it's like to see people die going up into space, the speed of development and this extra requirements to test things to make sure they're safe has slowed down aerospace. Like as fast as Tesla's going, the Falcon 9 Heavy was released as a concept in like 2005 or 7 or something, and we just saw it launch this year in 2018. So it was over a decade from the idea being released on something that was just scaling up something they're already doing to actually having done it. So that wasn't anything to Mars. That wasn't anything to the moon. That was just, I have this small rocket and we're going to make a bigger rocket. It took a decade. And they succeeded, and they landed they landed the 2 boosters and the first stage center of the Falcon 9 Heavy all at once, and it was really impressive and really cool, and a lot did have to happen for them to get there, but it still took a decade to make something small big. Now Falcon Heavy has to get a lot bigger, and there has to be a lot of development for all the space side of it to actually go to the moon or go to Mars. So I would say that if they doubled the investment, it could be done in a decade from the Falcon 9 investment stage to now. And they do know a lot about what they're doing, but I would lean more towards the 15 years from now before they could have a system to go to Mars.
Well, do you have anything else to say? I mean, I've basically my bottom line summary on Elon Musk is that his engineering legacy is probably going to help accelerate the curve of technological advancement somewhat, especially in space transportation and electric cars. I'm not sure about his ability to run a profitable enterprise, but those are basically my, if you would summarize on Elon in a nutshell, that's what it would be.
Yeah, well, I think that Tesla right now in 2018 is the Tesla persona, like, story company. And it's going to go from here to a professionally run automobile company owned by somebody else in 10 years, 5 to 10 years, at probably a much lower valuation, but probably a part of some Chinese conglomerate or a existing car company or something else. But and with Elon no longer being the story or the CEO, and I just feel like it will be a big successful thing. A lot of people will have lost money. A lot of debt will be uh, paid off at cents on the dollar, but eventually it will be a car company making cars profitably. I feel like there's a really good shot of that happening with Elon Musk not as the CEO, but it's going to have to go through a bunch of events to get there.
All right.
You think there's any chance that happens, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that happens. Tesla shareholders want to be happy about that outcome, but yeah, there's a chance that that happens, and there's a chance that we're wrong too, and that somehow he pulls a miracle off. But again, with Tesla's stock price is a completely different conversation. This is more just about the legacy of Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, I think that Tesla being around is his legacy. I think that Tesla will be around. It's not going to go to zero and fall apart. It's not like a startup car company anymore. But it may not be the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought really what I like Tesla is what I like the idea of it being contained to a luxury car company that made a few specialty cars at good margins. And it kind of had the equivalent of being like a McLaren or a maybe like or like a Maserati or something like that, where it's they have like they're a bunch of nice cars, $70,000 plus that are all electric and have good specs, but they don't really. But the mass market just avoid that just due to profitability concerns. They chose to go a different direction.
Well, if you guys are listening and you guys have a lot of really, um, what's a nice thing to say? Really well-spoken opinions of Elon, we'd love to read them in the comments. If you just want to yell at us, I won't read your comments, I promise. So if you'd like to come anywhere else, you can go to Reddit. We have our subreddit at Nothing Exempt, and you can start a thread or comment on a thread there with us. And if you just want something short and sweet, we're guaranteed to read your tweets if you mention us at Nothing Exempt. Why don't you close us out, Nick?
Yeah, thank you for listening, everybody. Yeah, you can reach us on Reddit and Twitter. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this podcast.